Hi, I'm OllyTheArtful, and thank you for joining this journey of me painting the blue spotted ray. This is my first YouTube video, or my edited one anyway. I did a few streams live, got a few comments, got a few views, but I've time-lapsed the footage into a 15-minute video. Today I'm going to explore the subject that I'm painting here, the blue spotted ray. This is a photo I took while scuba diving in Egypt. I'll have a little chat about the techniques that I'm using whilst painting, and also talk about the materials I use, the brushes, the types of canvas. And I'll go into a little bit of mindfulness about scuba diving and taking you to the depths below, understanding what it's like if you haven't experienced it before. Or if you have experienced it before, why don't you take yourself back to where you know and where you love? But before I talk about all that, I'll explain what got me into painting in the first place. So during school, I was always quite artistic. I never really excelled in art itself, I guess, because I wasn't pushed that way. I went to a very scientific school. I think it's a shame that often we are limited in what we're taught at school and really focused towards, well, I certainly was. I was focused towards university, the sciences, the maths, the English, the physics, the chemistries. And they kind of set aside the artistic subject, which is really where we can form our expression and our individuality. I studied engineering at university, and engineering, I guess, is the art of the science. You can use your creative ability to design whatever you want. With engineering, I guess the boundaries are limitless, other than physics. Physics doesn't apply to art, so the boundaries really are limitless. As long as what you're portraying on the piece of paper or the canvas or in the sculpture is something that is an expression, is an emotion. And this is kind of, guess, why I started doing art. An example of this is, even though the photo looks a little bit angry, I'm using different colours from the photo. And I've actually changed the expression slightly from the front. And the reason is to add a bit of happiness in this animal. This is what I love about art. We can start painting things away from the fixed knowns that we have around us, and we can start exploring different media, different expressions. We're not fixed to the reality that we're bound by, that we live in at the moment. And this brings me on to my recent uptake of my art. Specifically portraits, I guess. I never thought of doing it until my grandmother died in April. My grandmother was quite a deep woman. I guess on the surface she came across as like any semi-conservative lady of that generation. But by the time of her death, she was quite open-minded and resilient against the current world we live in. And I genuinely believe that me exploring my art would have motivated her while she was alive. The painting that you can see now is the first ever portrait I did, and it was of my grandmother, and I painted it after her death. We displayed it at her funeral, and her joyful expression in the painting brought many people through that difficult time, adding an element of, I guess, happiness in the room. Knowing that she passed on as a happy lady, living life to the full, to the very end at the age of 97. I don't know how to explain scuba diving, other than you're literally taking yourself into a completely different world. You are weightless. You can hear absolutely everything, but yet, although it's so noisy because of the bubbles, you can hear yourself breathing, you can hear boats a mile off, you can hear other divers breathing. It's really noisy and there's all these pops and cracks going on constantly. Yet, it is so peaceful. You're floating there, looking at the scenery, looking at the fish, the corals, the plankton floating in the water, the different colours that are down there. Sometimes it's really, really blue. Other times it's really, really green. And if you go deep, there's not much colour at all. It looks very black and white. Until you turn a torch on and it illuminates everything. Just so beautiful. And if you've never done it and you're healthy enough, go and do it. It is the most eye-opening thing to do. You will understand the world and the peace and who you are in a much, much better way. Because you're alone down there. You're alone with nature. It's the first place that I ever went that felt truly untouched. Of course, it has been touched by mankind, but you can't tell when you're under there. And honestly, I wish I could go back. Maybe one day I will, but for now, I've got other focuses. I want to explore above the waves. I want to explore the world, the people we live with, and not forget about our culture. And that is what I'm doing with my art. I took this photo of the blue spotted ray when I was diving in Egypt. Now, I think I took the photo because I really thought that perhaps I was invading its space. Blue spotted rays are extremely docile. They're very tolerant of what's going around them. I got very close to it and it didn't bat an eyelid, although I'm sure it doesn't have eyelids. But they're very docile, they're very beautiful animals. And I know taking a photo of something in its own environment is slightly hypocritical, given that I want to be at peace with nature. But to explore the world, I think you have to go past those boundaries which humans shouldn't really be going. We shouldn't be underwater, but I think that's the main fun of it. It is the most beautiful activity I have ever done. I hope you've been listening along and watching this painting. You can see the layers build up. The way I paint, I envision different layers. So the first layer I built up was just whack the colour on with no real plan. Get the colour roughly right. It doesn't really matter because you're going to paint over it anyway. But that's the base colour. That's the colour that's kind of going to stick through the next layer and the layer after that and the layer after that. And then once you've got those layers down, you've got that base layer, you can then do a slightly more detailed layer. So I tend to paint in 3 layers. I do the background, which is a solid colour. Not much effort goes into that. The second layer brings out colourful washes, like you can see the orange around the blue spotted ray's eye. That was a second layer. Now the third layer, which I'm currently on, is the detail. So currently I'm detailing around all the spots, so they're much darker in the edges than they are in the centre. I've also added a few texture marks throughout the ray. You can see there's lots of lines where it's flowing. There's a lot of sand resting on the ray as well, which I tried to mimic by stabbing a old, large, rough brush on the animal with quite a wet paint, and it's created that texture dotted effect that sand has. And at this point, as you can see, I've moved on to the background, although I'll always paint the background first. I'll finish off by adding detail to the background, inferring the colour from the subject. So in this case, you can see the shadows I'm creating are using the same orange that were around the eye of the blue spotted ray. I've also noticed that the sand is a lot lighter. I'm redoing the background colour now. It's much lighter than what I originally painted. So again, I'm creating a sandy background for me to create those tones and the texture that the sand comes with. When I'm doing the background, I don't really care about the detail. It's all about getting a block of colour down, and the detail comes later. If you looked at my paintings after an hour or so, you'd think I was extremely amateur. There is no depth of colour there. However, as you can see now, I'm creating that depth of colour through almost stabbing the canvas with the colour of yellow ochre. Now you can see I'm creating like a cave or a swim through that goes into the wider ocean through this rock. I think this frames it quite nicely and adds a bit of interest to the background. So what I try and do with all my paintings is find a focal point, and the focal point is usually the eye. But then your eye needs to wander in a direction to explore the painting, and I guess this sort of brightness of colour in the top left, and as you'll see towards the end of the painting I've created a top right, there's a natural place for your eye to move to after looking at the ray. You can now see that I'm using that technique to sort of stab the paper, so you get that nice texture, sort of gravelly, sandy effect. I'm also adding, this is my favourite colour for any shading, it's called Payne's Grey. It creates a depth, it's not black, it's not that dark actually, but it's like a bluey grey colour. And it's great for shadows, it's great for any sort of details, because ultimately I don't like painting with black. Black is not my colour. So as you can see, I'm now finishing off painting the top corner so you can see the wider ocean. So instantly that's lifted the whole painting up. It's become much brighter, much nicer, and much more beautiful. Sometimes it's not obvious where to stop on a painting, and I guess I try and stop as soon as possible. So I'm just finishing off a couple of highlights, and I'll finish this video with the reference image, and then it's going to fade into the actual painting. If you have enjoyed this video, as this is my first one, please do like and subscribe and hit the notification button so you see when my new videos are coming up. I have no real intention of monetizing this channel, as I would love my art to do the talking. So thank you for watching, and I really appreciate it. And keep an eye out for my next video.